Think of it, Scumbug. The turtles and the city's biggest insect destroyer wiped out in a single stroke. Here's your look at the new NECA toys: Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Antrax, and Scumbug. This creepy crawly twosome are unswerving servants of Krang and Shredder. They would be satisfied in dicing up the turtles for their masters, and in the event that they happen to spoil any purveyors of pest managed within the manor, so much the higher. Antrax comes with extra arms, a war-all, knife, membership, and sword accessories, while Scumbag comes with gasoline gun, internet launcher, insects, and fission detector. Krang's Executioner and a Dimension X Exterminator? Pfft, turtles don't stand a chance. Before, of course, we get a closer look, though, at Antrax and Scumbug. Let me first thank the folks over at NECA Toys that did provide this sample that we're about to have a look at in this review. Let's go ahead now and measure off to see how tall the figures stand. We'll do some size comparisons in a second. Antrax is about 7¼ inches in height, which translates to a figure that's about 18½ centimeters tall. As for Scumbug, I guess we should probably factor in the antennae after all. The figure with antennae included is 6½ inches in height, or just a little over 16½ centimeters tall. Then, to compare these two with other turtle figures from NECA, we can bring in just a normal-sized turtle. In this case, it's Michelangelo. It's always the case of poor Michelangelo. But you can still see the smaller of the two, Scumbug, is still taller than Mikey, only if you include his antenna. If not for the antenna, I would say that they're probably about the same size, although Scumbug's quite a bit more portlier. One accessory that comes also included with this 2-pack is the fission detector, and though it's not in an episode that these two appear in, it appears in the Invasion of the Turtle Snatchers. And in that episode, the fission detector is actually carried around, I believe, by Bebop and Rocksteady. So for that reason, going to bring in Bebop, and for that reason, we're also going to bring in Rocksteady. Bebop, I would say, is pretty close to Antrax, but not quite right. Rocksteady, of course, notably is a lot shorter, but still they're a lot bigger than Scumbug, one of the figures we're going to look at in this review. On to now the figure's accessories, and I've tried to do my best to kind of group them by the characters that they belong to, even though in the case of the fission detector, doesn't really belong to either one of them. We're going to talk more about that in a second. But Scumbug has smaller accessories to little tiny critters, of course, that are going to be crawling around him. He kind of gets like 4 accessories, and then Antrax, being the larger character, of course, also gets the larger accessories, sort of like SCTV. The larger man gets the larger pork chop. I'm not sure if anybody gets that reference. But anyways, though, let's have a look at the accessories that come included with both the figures. We're going to start things off first with the fission detector, as we certainly have already talked about it. While they doesn't necessarily belong to either one of these characters, it comes from a different episode altogether, Invasion of the Turtle Snatchers. And then one of the reasons why I did want to bring in Rocksteady and Bebop, because I think it's the thing that they are carrying around with them. There's sort of a running gag between fission and fission. Not quite the same thing. The fission detector actually is nicely detailed, and one thing I do like about the NECA Toys releases of Turtle toys is that you don't always get accessories that specifically belong to these particular characters. In fact, it usually gives them the opportunity to kind of slide in there some extra accessories that would have appeared in other cartoon episodes, and then you can easily just display with another character instead if you want. The fission detector is nicely colored here in all purple. You can see some really sharp panel lining, outlining little tiny buttons. How would somebody with such even small hands be able to go in there and paint the panel lining on those little tiny dials? But still, they've managed to pull that off rather nicely. It does certainly look like it does from the cartoon. You got that darker coloring of purple on the back, the lighter coloring of the violet on the front, and that's certainly going to be a nice piece. It doesn't have to necessarily, again, go with either one of these characters. I might even just decide to display it with Shredder. That seems like something that Shredder would be carrying around with him. So that's nice to see that they included that. Something that also appears in a different episode is this little bug. It's sort of a energy net fire. It actually comes from the episode of Night of the Rogues, in which actually Scumbug uses this to create an energy net that catches around the turtles. And it's nicely detailed. Very small, yes, and very, very easily lost if you're not too careful. It's been molded, I'm guessing, here in probably gray plastic. Probably the bottom of it, the base of it's been painted in purple. And nice little lines of lighter purple have been added in there as well. That can be also carried around in his hand also if you're interested. And then what's rather interesting is to also come include with Scumbug, which I think is more the nod to the original Playmates version of Scumbug, is you get these little tiny roaches. The roaches themselves appear to be similar, if not identical to one another. Here's 2 of them, and then we'll just sort of finish, we'll grab all 3 of them. There's Mama Bear, Papa Bear, and a little baby roach there. All 3 of them. You can see their underbellies have all been painted yellow. They've also put the little tiny dots there on the sides of their eyes. I'm going to put the other 2 down. It's a little bit easier to kind of hold this one so you can see. Why do I feel so compelled to kind of go? I'm not going to make those noises. Let's not interrupt the review with talking about little insect voices. The legs themselves are pretty soft and plastic. And again, I really just like the idea that they would have thrown that in there. Technically, yeah, Scumbug does also include one other accessory that you may not see right now. And I'm not trying to pose a riddle here. On the back of the figure, we're going to go ahead and pick this up right now. On the back, he actually has this like poisonous acid gun. It is actually attached by hose, and I would not certainly recommend trying to yank this off, as it's very attached both on the ends of the actual gun and attached to the tank on the back of his backpack as well. Now, there really isn't a place to store this, although if you look at the back of the tank, on the adjacent side, ooh, talking clever, on the adjacent side of the hose, there's like a little knob that sticks out here. Technically, what I was just doing was I was just taking that knob and just attaching sort of the gun against that. Put it like further down, that probably is the better way, and just sort of slide it up until it stays in place. You could probably do the blizzard. Yeah, you could do the blizzard test. It's not going to be falling off. Somebody right now is like, what's the blizzard test? Blizzard test is where you go to Dairy Queen and you order yourself a blizzard. They always take then the blizzard and they go up to the desk and they wanted to show you how thick the ice cream is. And usually it was the case before. They would just put it over top of your head. That stopped because I would imagine the ice cream probably was dumped on some poor kid's head. They just decide now to do it. They kind of do this quickly in front of the counter. That's the blizzard test. Anyways, though, you can certainly take the gun and it can fit into his hand. Either one of his hands are fine, although this hand right here I like to kind of display because it's usually on the same side. You really don't even need to pry the plastic away from the hand either in order to get the gun in his hand. Because of the nature of the very thin-handled gun anyways, it slides quite easily into his hand. No prying, no heating, no hairdryer is required at all. And technically, he also does have that other hand that serves as certainly a gripping hand that you can then take the little energy net attachment, little energy net weapon that he uses. You can also put that into his hand as well. So he really at least has the option to hold both accessories. Go ahead and take those off right now. Go ahead and take this. And just again, so it's not going to be dangling around for the rest of this review, I'm just going to slide this back onto the back of his backpack. Move it up just a little bit. There we go. Blizzard test. Love it. Getting, though, a closer look at Scumbug, I have reason to believe, my memory isn't always as good as it used to be, I have reason to believe I did have Scumbug back in the day, the one that was released by Playmates. So I feel sort of a warm spot looking at this one right here, and I don't even know why. Maybe, again, it is the reasoning that I had this figure initially. Now, this one, of course, is more pulled from the cartoon, so you got a lot more vibrant colors happening here in Scumbug that weren't necessarily the case there with the original Playmates release. One thing I do like about this one is it does have an actual opening mouth, so you can open and close it with little pincers on either side of his face. Bloodshot eyes also get awarded to this particular figure. The coloring on this guy is so very vibrant. I love the brighter colors that they decide to go with on this guy. You can see his exposed brain sticking out, rooted out from that, of course, is an antenna. And he's got himself a business shirt. He's dressing not casual today. He's got to dress a little more formal. One thing I do like is the way they've ripped the bottom end of the shirt, making it torn and tattered. And yet it really does add to the articulation of the figure where you're still rotating it. It doesn't feel like it's limited at all. All these little lesions and little spots and stuff sticking out from his body, not only in his tummy tum-tum, but also in his lower legs there as well, with some protruding little parts that are sticking out from his leg. The figure has a lot of stuff to take in, like just a feast for the eyes. I really, really like the way that this guy turned out. Of course, he does have the brighter colors, of course, on the back of his backpack, too. The brighter green tanks, both in the more lime variety and a more darker forest green down below. And, of course, he does have his shell on the back there also. The figure really is quite self-contained for his size and stature. I mean, really, for a figure this size, you would almost not even expect the figure to have that much in the way of posability, but quite the contrary. I also really like these hoses sticking out of his chest. Again, there's a lot to really take in with your eyes. For the articulation on Scumbug, let's do that right now. Mouth, of course, yes, opens and closes. Head, yeah, rotates back and forth and hinges up and down. Now, you can only get it to about here on his head. That's it. You can, however, though, bring his head down, and yeah, you can rock it back and forth also as well. Shoulders do come out quite comfortably at a 90-degree angle bend. You can then take the arms. Just watch those hoses, whatever you do. Oh, please. Oh, please. He does have a swivel at the bicep that's actually underneath the cut torn sleeve. That's nice. He also has a double hinge on the elbow. That's great. And also he does have a swivel in the hands all the way around. Check out also the veins there on his biceps. Lex Luger would be quite jealous. Again, like the gun, there really isn't a place where you can store it. I'm most likely, if anything, probably just going to be displaying it in his hand anyways. For his legs, though, they split out. You can bring the legs easily forward and easily back. There's a little mild swivel on the top there where that's essentially attached by its articulation point. Double hinge on the knees. And then, of course, when it comes to Scumbug's articulation, his ankles move back and forth this way, and you can also move them back and forth this way. And that's actually the same on both the sides. He's not a very symmetrical figure, which I think adds to the charm of him as well. Even like the one side is boots. The one side is gnarly looking arm and hands. It's a really, really neat looking figure. And I think for what I'll do is for the rest of this review, I'm going to go ahead and take the acid gun and put it into his hand. Just that way he's not going to be dragging all over the floor. That's not going to be good for anybody. Really, really like the look of Scumbug. Now, even though both of these figures are using brand new molds that I can't even imagine that they'd be able to reuse for anything else. Kudos again to the fact that NECA Toys are coming up with brand new molds for all of these figures. No more the better example than we actually have a look at Antrax. Not only is he getting a brand new body mold, a brand new head sculpt, but he's also getting extra arms. One of the first, if not any, for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle figures that we've gotten from NECA Toys. On to Antrax and his accessories. We're going to start things off first with a knife. The knife is small, but can be wielded in his hand. And actually, one of the benefits of this particular figure having 4 hands and 4 accessories, you can kind of do the math. That's going to work out rather nicely. He does have the smaller knife. As you can see, there's a little skull on the end of it, painted nicely in sort of an off ivory color. The handle has been painted well in a red, with some panel lining done additionally to that. And you can see as well, they've even painted the blade there too. Now this actually does fit on the back of the figure's torso. Simply just rotate it around and located on the back is a little holster. Easily you can take that knife and slide into the back. It does get a little tight, I've noticed, the further you push that in, and it becomes even more difficult when it comes to removing the knife. I would probably recommend if you are sliding this in, just don't put it in all the way. Maybe just leave it just like that so that you're not going to have to fight the knife to try to get that back out from its torso. Figure also comes included with a much larger hand sword. I would consider this, I guess, more of a sword than a knife. As you can see, it does have the spikes on the end of the knuckle guard here, and it nicely painted again with some additional panel lining afforded not only to the blade itself, but also spiraled around the handle there as well. Very, very cool. The figure also comes for clubbing with a big giant club with spikes sticking out on it. This would be quite a dangerous thing to be wielding around. Not only the fact that you're also putting that into the hands of Antrax with 4 arms to spare, but this is definitely a really cool looking weapon that he wields in his hand. You can see they even put the rings on the end of it to tell you it's been carved with wood. Some nice wood grain added in there, although there really isn't a lot of paint to indicate where the wood grain is. What they've done instead is only put a few little notches, a few little lines done in the actual black, with some additional panel lining to section off each one of the parts. Again, you've got some additional red down below there as well. Like, all of these weapons look so good. They're doing such a great job in these cartoon tie-in accessories. And then, of course, if you want something a little bit larger, then he has himself a double-sided axe. Little chipped away parts on the sides of the blade. And, of course, in the middle of that, you got yourself a skull face. Additional texturing, which I don't know if you guys will be able to see that or not. As I tip it slightly off to the camera, you can kind of see there's a little bit of texturing that they put to the surface on the actual axe. I do really like the look of this, though. It actually looks like the skeleton is holding the axe head in the middle of its hand. And of course, from there, you've got yourself quite a long-handled handle. Of course, all casted here, not in wood, but in plastic. But at least they've molded it nicely enough to make it look almost like it's got a wood finish to it. And again, all of these can fit into his hand. The thing about Antrax, though, whereas Scumbug had absolutely no issues whatsoever getting the weapons into his hand, Antrax just sort of have to deal with him a little bit differently. I found in all the cases when getting the accessories into Antrax's hands, I would first submerge the hand in hot water and pry the fingers away from the palm. Then you'll find a much easier time of getting the handles of these, just because the handles are a lot thicker. In the case of both the club as well as the larger axe, yeah, they're really thick handles. So I would probably recommend heating the hands of Antrax first before you actually put the accessories into his hand. Good. Got it. All right. Getting, though, a closer look now at Antrax, I can't again imagine the fact that NECA Toys would scratch this, take this from scratch, and build a brand new body. Because, I mean, really, when you're looking at it, how much of this could be reused for any figures whatsoever? It's brand new. It's all on its own, first of all. It's a completely original mold. But again, once Antrax gets released, I can't imagine this being a reused mold for anything else that NECA Toys could ever release. So again, it's a testament to what they're doing really with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle cartoon line. In all the cases, other than really like the Turtles, all the figures have had their own unique molds, probably never to be seen ever again. For the head sculpt, I love it. It's such a great, colorful, bright head. Of course, you've got the panel lining added in there as well to outline the sections of his eyes, dotted the pupils and the middles of his eyes as well, and of course, they've also outlined the sections of his teeth too. Unlike those Scumbug, Antrax's mouth does not actually open. These little pincers, though, would you consider these pincers? I'm going to consider these pincers, do rotate on the front of the figure. And he does also have an antenna that can also rotate as well. These seem to be not necessarily ball joints, but peg joints, but you can rotate them at least all the way around. So if you wanted to, yeah, you can bring the antennas up. Looks a bit strange, or you can also bring them, of course, down. I think I'd be more probably inclined to kind of just, I think, bring them back a little bit. I think from what I remember in the cartoon, his ears usually were just, I think, a little bit more back. Just going to do that. There we go. I think from what I remember, it looks sort of more like that. And again, I just like the fact that they actually made things on this guy posable. He does have sort of like that executioner's hood on, which I think is a nice touch. The head sculpt is, though, separate from the collar piece that is making up his mask. And of course, like in the case of Scumbug and in the case of the TMNT cartoon turtles, you've got like that real stark line. I'm trying my best not to cover everything with my hands, but see that line right down the middle there. The back side is all the darker color. The front side is more the lighter color. You don't see it as much, though, on Antrax, simply just because his body is already dark to start off with. And like his sort of back abdomen area would all be kind of the back section of where the shadow would be hitting this side of the body anyways. But he really has some really interesting elements going for him. A little pocket there on the side of his belt, carrying over same motif of the little skeleton, the skull, little logo there in the middle of his belt, and he's got a little skirting there down below there as well. I do really like this guy again. He has a little more symmetry going for him than Scumbug, but again, like there's certain aspects of him, like the ripped away sections of his boot, for example, reveal a little couple of toes where this boot, doesn't have the rippage going on there. Let's have a look at the articulation here, though, on Antrax. The head sculpt is on a ball joint. Now, I did notice on this head sculpt, it was a lot looser. And not loose to the point where it's loose and floppy, but certainly it was a lot easier to rotate his head all the way around. So yeah, when it comes to Antrax's head, you can lift it up quite a lot, actually. You can bring the head down to only about there. And yeah, you can also hinge it back and forth this way as well. We've factored in, of course, the articulation. There's points there. There's points there. There's points on both the fronts of his little, again, I don't know, pincers? We're going to go with pincers on that. Each one of the arms, by the way, are articulated. They can come out comfortably at a 90-degree angle bend. And that's the case on both of them, actually, as well. Getting very much the Goro vibes when I'm looking at this guy for obvious reasons. The arms do rotate, yeah, all the way around, also as well. He does have a swivel in his bicep, and that's the same on all the arms. It's just a little tighter on some of the arms, but yeah, he does have a swivel there on his bicep. Figure has double hinges on his elbows, and in all the cases, yeah, checking off all the boxes. And yeah, the hands rotate all the same. Same as on all of them. Upper torso is on a very generous ball joint. I mean, look at this. I mean, between the head, how much that's able to move, and how much this is able to move, there's quite a lot of articulation, surprisingly, for a figure of this size. The figure's legs do split out as well. You can bring Antrax's legs forward and back. There's a swivel at the top of the thigh, a double hinge on the knee, no articulation where I would have thought there would have been, right around here at the top of the boot, where that would have been, I'm guessing, a separate piece. But at least the ankles do move forward and back this way, and you can also ankle rock them this way too. Not as maybe commonly known, these two characters. I mean, we're sort of getting really near the end of, I'm guessing, a lot of the villains that would have appeared in the TMNT cartoon. Ironically enough, Antrax and Scumbug also appeared in Night of the Rogues. And I think as of right now, thinking about all the other characters that we've gotten so far, yeah, I think we've got all of them now except for Tempestra. I'm certain we are probably going to be getting her at some point. And if that's the case, yeah, you can replicate the scene that we see in Night of the Rogues. This is a fun set in both the cases. I mean, reiterating the obvious, I can't imagine that they would be reusing these molds for any other figures that they've planned for the near future. I mean, Antrax and Scumbug are very much their own unique molds. Fantastically sculpted, equally well painted, job well done by NECA Toys. I generally have a really fun time when it comes to reviewing the TMNT turtle figures from NECA Toys, generally because, first of all, I was a big fan of the cartoon growing up, but just the stuff that they've been putting out as of late, even the last couple of years, some really cool looking figures. And when it comes to certainly these figures, I think I had a bigger blast of actually playing around with Antrax and Scumbug, because it's not your traditional looking turtle toys. I mean, it's not your Rocksteady, it's not your Bebop, it's certainly not your Shredder. They're really thinking outside the mold with very creative looking characters to start off with. Both the characters of Antrax and Scumbug are actually cartoon characters. They only appeared for 1 or 2 episodes in the series, but left enough of a lasting impression of, first of all, for me to remember the characters, but second of all, for NECA Toys to actually venture out to actually produce them from scratch. Again, I continue to say this, but a testament to NECA Toys and their dedication to producing the TMNT line is that they're producing these molds with the intended plan of never using them again. I mean, just to look at both Scumbug and Antrax, can you imagine? If you think for a second, could they use these molds for anything else, especially Antrax? What could they possibly use this mold again? Maybe they could eventually venture off and maybe give us different color schemes for this figure, but I gotta imagine it's one and we're done. And I'm so even more happier the fact that NECA Toys are doing the stuff that they are with the TMNT stuff, producing these figures that, again, you're probably never going to see these molds ever again. I think my favorite, though, of the two, I feel like I have a soft spot for Scumbug simply just because, again, I have a real weird recollection of actually having this toy as a kid growing up from the Playmates variety, of course. But I gotta feel like I'm leaning a little more towards Antrax. Anytime you get a figure that has 4 arms and the capabilities as well to be able to wield all the weapons he comes included with in each of his hands, I'm doing it right now, I gotta say, Antrax is probably one of my favorite figures that they have been releasing as of late, at least of the villain variety. What do you guys think of Antrax and Scumbug? Let me know down below in the comments section. And again, a big thank you to the folks over at NECA Toys that did provide the sample of Antrax and Scumbug. I so kindly enjoyed having a look at in this review. I've had an absolute blast playing with these two toys and probably will continue to do so even after the record has finished. If you are new to this channel, you're enjoying the content that you're seeing, first of all, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, that you also as well turn on the bell notification, and that you're also as well coming back to this channel on a regular basis. Well, we have wrapped up things right now for Antrax and Scumbug. Rest assured there will be more NECA reviews lined up and coming your way in the not so distant future. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.